The Douglas SB Dauntless, a plane that flew into a steep dive toward its target, was notorious for delivering fatal blows to Japanese fleet carriers in June 1942 during the Battle of Midway. Navy pilot Lieutenant Charles Ford II was in a training exercise in 1944 when the Dauntless crashed and was recovered from the water 50 years later. He was attempting to land the very young Dauntless, a short 4 months old, on the training carrier known as the USS Wolverine. He underestimated himself and wasn't quick enough on his approach, which resulted in the plane striking the lake in a nearly perfect vertical position. Luck was on Ford's side that day. He walked away from the crash with deep cuts to his forehead. It wasn't until 1994 that the operation to remove the naval aircraft began. The Dauntless was found in 177 feet of water sitting completely upright at the bottom of the lake. It is reported that the deep, cold conditions helped preserve the plane rather well. Number 9. Elongated skull found in underwater cave. Recently, at the bottom of a water-filled cavern in Mexico, archaeologists have discovered a number of human skulls, which is causing us to second-guess what we think we know about early Americans in North America. According to a study done by the State University of Ohio, the skulls belonged to people who lived 9,000 to 13,000 years ago, well before the caves were filled with water. The structure and shape of the skulls were studied by the researchers with the hopes of learning more about these people who lived in these caves so long ago. The oldest skull bore close similarities to modern Native Americans that lived in Greenland and Alaska, while the second oldest skull could easily be compared to the European populations. The first Americans were much more complex, much more diverse than we thought, Mark Cuba, co-lead author of the study and professor of anthropology at The Ohio State University, said in a statement. Number 8. The mystery of Foss Lake. A 42-year-old case of missing people came back into the limelight when 2 cars were found on September 17, 2013, submerged in Foss Lake, Custer County, Oklahoma. Between both vehicles found, skeletal remains of 6 bodies were discovered. A 1969 Chevrolet Camaro belonging to young man Johnny Williams, 16, was first discovered, and it was confirmed that the other 2 bodies belonged to Leah Gale Johnson, 18, and Thomas Michael Rios, also 18. It was reported that the 3 were on their way to attend a high school football game in the next town over. The second car was a 50s model Chevrolet, but inside were the bodies of 3 adults. The medical examiner had confirmed the bodies belonged to John Alva Porter, 69, Nora Marie Duncan, 58, and Cleburne Hammock, 52. It was reported by the Oklahoman that 2 of the 3 were reported missing in 1969, a year before the 3 teenagers went missing. As with any mystery, especially with people vanishing, speculation is bound to occur, especially in small-town Sayre, Oklahoma. Being it was the 70s, the talk amongst the townspeople was that the young people were involved in counterculture or perhaps a drug smuggling ring. Yet according to the discovery, both of the accidents proved that there was no one else involved. They were not murdered. All 6 of them died from drowning, and the 2 accidents, which happened a year apart, had nothing to do with each other. Jimmy Williams, brother of Johnny Williams, who was a mere 12 years old at the time, does believe that foul play was involved during the time of the accident. I think they came across bad people, he told a reporter for the Oklahoman. Number 7. Long-lost locomotives. What started as a regular day for charter boat captain Paul Hepler mapping out the ocean floor ended up being somewhat of a unique day after stumbling across 2 perfectly preserved rare locomotives nearly 90 feet down. In New Jersey in 1985, it was discovered that the trains were Planet Class 222T models, which are considered to be one of the few oldest steam trains that were built in the United States. No one knew how they got there because there's nothing on record of them even disappearing. Dozens and dozens of hours of research were poured into the mysteries of the underwater train yard, but to this day it remains a mystery, mostly because there's no record of these 2 locomotives ever being built in the first place. Divers and archaeologists alike have had their speculations as to what happened, with ideas ranging from them being taken from Boston to the mid-Atlantic when a storm ensued 5 miles off the coast of Long Beach, New Jersey. In the storm, the locomotives were speculated to have either fallen off the barge accidentally or they were purposely shoved off to make the load weigh less, getting rid of unnecessary materials to prevent the ship from going down if the storm happened to get worse. Despite how they got to the bottom of the ocean, it's pretty neat to think that there were 2 locomotives so perfectly well preserved, even after an estimated 160 years. Number 6. Elusive glass octopus. In 2021, an underwater robot finally captured footage of what is known as a glass octopus. a cephalopod that is widely recognized as elusive and almost impossible to capture on film. It was first discovered over 100 years ago, with records indicating its first sighting in 1918. The glass octopus has a tiny body that doesn't ever reach past 17 inches and weighs merely an ounce or two. Aside from its eyes, digestive tract, and optic nerves, the octopus is entirely transparent. And for good reason. Without this defense mechanism, it wouldn't be safe from its predators, and it also wouldn't be able to sneak up on prey. Due to how deep it lives in the ocean and how tiny it is, sightings are very rare. Thanks to the robot Sebastian, who was assigned the task of going to the ocean floor during the 34-day expedition aboard the Schmidt Ocean Institute's research vessel, he was able to catch not only one but two sightings of this beautiful and rare creature. On top of these sightings while on the ship, scientists in attendance were able to study the behavior and immune systems of coral and sponges, which could amazingly and miraculously improve medical research. Amazing proof that there's more out there than our brains can comprehend. Number 5. Submerged forest. Just as prehistoric humans started making their way out of Africa, cypress trees started to grow on the banks near a river by the Gulf of Mexico. As the years passed and the trees got older, they eventually started to fall and at last were buried in the sediment. As climatic temperatures increased, sea levels rose, covering the remains of what was left of the forest. Interestingly enough, scientists have recently uncovered the forest and have said that its contents may be able to create new medicines and ultimately save lives. Before this discovery, the forest remained untouched for thousands of years. Hurricane Ivan hit the Gulf's coast in 2004 and swept up the seabed, revealing the near-perfect entombed forest. Wood naturally decomposed in water, but because it was so heavily buried in sediments, oxygen and shipworms were unable to do their damage. It really looked like something that you could have picked up from today. It still had bark on it. It still had all the coloration on the inside. It was just locked away for 60,000 years, said one of the divers, Brian Helmuth, a professor of marine and environmental sciences at Northeastern University. Number 4. The VASA shipwreck. Not too far from the deck, the VASA set sail in March 1627 and was on her way to her maiden voyage. Sadly, after departing, heavy winds toppled her over, causing her to sink almost immediately. Most of the bronze cannons were salvaged in the 17th century, and the VASA was not seen again until 1950 when it was discovered again in a shipping area located in Stockholm Harbor. By 1961, the ship was salvaged with a shockingly large intact hull. During that time, the remains of at least 15 people were recovered, along with thousands of artifacts in and around the hull. Amongst the items were tools, cannons, cutlery, weapons, clothes, food, coins, drinks, and 6 of the 10 sails belonging to the ship. This key discovery gave insight into shipbuilding techniques, naval warfare, and simple everyday life in 17th century Sweden. After being discovered, archaeologists were able to recover the VASA, and she now sits at home in her museum in Sweden, where she receives routine care and monitoring. Research is continually done on how to preserve her. Number 3. Rare deep-sea squid. It is widely known that the sea and ocean are very mysterious and alluring because there's so much down there that no one knows about and has yet to be discovered. Even with how advanced technology is, the grand majority remains untouched. Earlier this year, a team of subsea explorers went on the deepest dive of a lifetime in the hopes of finding a shipwreck that sank during an extremely intense naval battle in 1944. A journey that made headline news. It was discovered that the USS Johnston was amazingly and perfectly well preserved, with its guns reportedly still pointing in the direction of the enemy by a team from the Caledon Oceanic. Just a few days before the explorers' trip, however, they ended up diving to a different part of the seafloor just a few kilometers away from the ship. They ended up finding something as equally interesting, if not more. A deep-sea researcher named Alan Jamieson from the University of Western Australia sat and watched frame after frame of the footage provided by the divers. After what seemed like forever, he finally found a blurry form, yet claimed to be recognized as a squid just cruising above the seabed. 20,000 feet below the surface of the sea. That's roughly 1.5 kilometers deeper than any squid has ever swum before. Jamieson provided the footage to a zoologist friend, and he confirmed the footage to be that of a magnapenidae, which are the most mysterious squid in the entire world. They were described as weird creatures with very long, skinny arms that resemble spaghetti noodles. Squid are top hunters, and so their existence this deep in the water suggests that there's life down there far more than we can imagine there to be. Number 2. Water ghosts. It seems every small town has a spooky ghost story. Lake Lanier, which is located in the foothills of the northern Georgia mountains, is no exception. Some locals have claimed mysterious arms reach out from the watery depths and allegedly angry spirits call people home to submerged graves. An alarming 200 people have died in drownings and boating accidents since 1994. The lake is well known as a fun spot for swimming and water sports. The lake's reputation comes with a past. Before it became a lake, it was a lush and thriving community and had cute names such as Castleberry Bottom. Army Corps of Engineers decided they wanted to create a lake in the fertile region to provide power and water. They offered to pay locals to relocate so they could get the job done, but many people refused to give up their land, which often went back generations in their family and had sentimental value that they couldn't put a price on. Sadly, some residents felt they had their hands tied behind their backs and accepted the offer. Construction started in 1956, and residents couldn't do much other than watch water rise above their homes. Workers did try to move and mark graves that they were able to, but some were likely left untouched, resulting in them going underwater. Other than creepy paranormal encounters, locals have also reported feeling objects, yet not seeing them. It's also said that there have been sightings of very large fish that resemble the size of a car. And most importantly, and not so surprisingly, remains from the unmarked graves would turn up pretty often. Number 1. Ancient Roman Medication. A ship called the Relito del Pocino sank over 2,000 years ago off the coast of Tuscany, Italy. It wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that an Italian archaeology team discovered the ship. Surprisingly, its contents did not include money, jewels, or gold. What was found instead rather were multiple tin cans full of perfectly preserved medication, thought to be eye medication for the ancient Romans. This discovery was said to give insight into the development of medicine over the centuries. Also inside the tins sat beeswax, pine resin, starch, and even olive oil. Starch was commonly used for cosmetics, olive oil was used for perfumes, and pine resin was used to prevent the olive oil from spoiling. The study was able to provide key information on ancient medical and pharmaceutical practices, as well as the development of pharmacology and medicine over the centuries. That's all for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.